Rain poured like broken glass that night, each drop slicing through the silence that filled the house once filled with laughter. Maya sat at the edge of her bed, her hands trembling as she held the letter that had shattered the illusion of her perfect marriage. 10 years. 10 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and blind faith, and yet the man she had built her world around had been building another behind her back. Ethan's betrayal wasn't loud. It came in whispers, in late-night calls, in perfume that didn't belong to her, and in excuses wrapped too neatly to question. When she finally saw the truth, a message thread that read like a confession, something inside her simply stilled. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only stood there, staring at the man she thought she knew, and whispered, "You don't have to explain. I understand now." That night, she walked away quietly. No drama, no threats, no tears. She left the house, her wedding ring, and every piece of her that begged for his love. She moved into a small apartment on the edge of the city, where the walls didn't echo his voice. The world thought she was broken, but in truth, she was rebuilding, quietly, deliberately, and stronger than before. In the first few months, she was invisible. She avoided people, social media, and everything that reminded her of who she used to be. But grief has a strange way of planting seeds. One morning, while sipping coffee in her bare kitchen, Maya opened her old journal, the one she hadn't touched since her university days. Inside were sketches, ideas, and designs, her forgotten dreams. She used design dresses before marriage became her full-time job. She smiled faintly, as if meeting an old friend. Days turned into nights filled with fabric, needles, and sleepless creativity. What started as therapy became passion, and what began as passion became a small business. She called it Solace by Maya. She posted her first designs online, unsure if anyone would care. But people did. Her designs carried emotion. They told stories of healing, quiet power, and rebirth. Within a year, she had a following, then clients, then investors. Meanwhile, Ethan's world had begun to crumble. Slowly, almost poetically, the woman he betrayed Maya with had left him, taking with her not just affection, but his peace. His business suffered, his reputation dimmed, and his home, once so full of comfort, now echoed emptiness. Every corner whispered her name. He'd see her favorite mug, her books, her handwriting on old sticky notes that read, "Dinner at 7, don't be late, red heart." He realized too late what he had lost. But time has a cruel way of showing us the price of our choices. A year later, fate crossed their paths again at a charity gala. Maya had been invited as a featured designer. Her latest collection was gaining attention for its elegance and emotion. Ethan had come as a guest of an old business associate. Unaware she'd be there. When she entered the room, silence followed. She looked radiant, poised, graceful, untouchable. Gone was the woman who cried in silence. This Maya carried herself like someone who had met pain and learned to dance with it. Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. Every part of him screamed to run to her, to fall at her feet, to beg for forgiveness. But she didn't even glance his way at first. When she finally noticed him across the room, her expression didn't change. No anger, no sorrow, no longing, just calm detachment. After the event, he found her outside under the soft city lights. "Maya," he said quietly, his voice trembling, "can we talk?" She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his, calm, unreadable. "Talk about what, Ethan?" "About us. About everything I ruined. I made a mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I've lost everything that mattered to me." She studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Ethan, you didn't lose me because of a mistake. You lost me because you didn't value what you had when it was yours." He stepped closer, desperate. "I've changed. I swear. I want another chance. Please, Maya." The night air hung thick with his regret. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but also the weight of years that could never be undone. "Ethan," she said softly, "I loved you once more deeply than words could describe. But love doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it means letting go for good." Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded. This was the moment she had imagined 1,000 times. The apology, the begging, the chance to say all the things that once burned inside her. And yet, she felt no satisfaction, only peace. He looked at her like a drowning man reaching for a ship that had already sailed. So that's it? After everything? She tilted her head slightly. After everything, yes, because I finally learned to choose myself. Ethan's shoulders slumped. The weight of 10 years pressed down on him. I miss you every day. Maya gave a soft, almost bittersweet smile. Then let that memory teach you to never take love for granted again. As she turned to leave, her car pulled up. Before stepping in, she glanced back one last time. Goodbye, Ethan. He stood there, watching as the car disappeared into the night. The same woman he once betrayed now carried a grace he could never touch again. And for the first time, Ethan understood some silences are louder than words, and some departures are final not because of hate, but because peace has been found elsewhere. In the following months, Maya's life continued to flourish. Her designs reached international platforms, and her name became synonymous with resilience and rebirth. She never remarried, but she was never lonely. Her work, her friends, her newfound purpose, they became her family. But fate wasn't done with their story yet. Because sometimes the universe brings old souls together not to rekindle what was lost, but to teach what was never learned. One cold autumn evening, as Maya prepared for her next show in Paris, a letter arrived at her office, handwritten, trembling ink. It was from Ethan. It began, I don't expect forgiveness, but there's something you should know. Continue, but there's something you should know, the letter read, his handwriting shaky, as though written with hands that no longer trusted themselves. Maya's fingers lingered on the paper, a strange chill settling in her chest. She hadn't seen or heard from Ethan since that night at the gala. She debated tossing the letter aside, but curiosity, or perhaps closure, made her unfold the rest. I've been sick for some time now, the letter continued. Asterisk, the doctor says it's advanced. Too far for much hope. I didn't want to reach out before, because I didn't want your pity. I wanted your forgiveness, though I know I don't deserve it. I just need to tell you that you were the best part of my life. Maya, the only real part. Everything else was noise. Asterisk. She sat back, the words sinking into her like soft rain on old soil. Sick. Ethan, the man who once seemed invincible, who wore pride like armor, was now fragile, mortal, undone. For a moment, she felt nothing but silence pressing in around her. Then a whisper of something, not love, not longing, but compassion. Her assistant knocked lightly on the door, pulling her back. Ms. Maya, the Paris team just confirmed your flight for tomorrow. Thank you, Clara, she said softly, folding the letter back into its envelope. Cancel it. That night, sleep refused to come. She kept seeing his face. Not the charming man from years ago, but the broken one she left standing under the streetlight. Her heart warred with itself. Logic said he had made his bed, but something deeper, more human, urged her to see him one last time. Not for him, but for the part of herself that once loved him so deeply. 2 days later, she stood outside a modest suburban home, far from the mansion they once shared. The house looked weary, much like its owner. When he opened the door, her breath caught. Ethan looked older, thinner, his once proud posture now softened by pain. But his eyes, those same storm-gray eyes, still recognized her instantly. Maya. His voice cracked as he said her name. Hello, Ethan, she replied quietly. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he stepped aside. Please, come in. The air inside carried a faint scent of medicine and fading memories. The walls were lined with photographs, most of them old, some from their early years together. There was one from their wedding day. She, radiant and white. He, looking at her like she was the only thing that existed. She glanced at it briefly, then looked away. He gestured toward the couch. I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I, she admitted. He smiled faintly, a shadow of the man she remembered. I've been following your work. Solaced by Maya, fitting name. You always had a way of turning pain into beauty. Pain teaches, she said softly. If you let it. He nodded, staring at his hands. I think I learned that too late. Silence hung between them. Thick, but not hostile. It was a silence of two people who had shared a lifetime and then lost it all. I didn't call you here to ask for anything, Ethan finally said. I just needed you to know. I see it now. Every time you waited up for me, every sacrifice you made, every moment I took for granted. I see it, and I wish I'd been the man you believed I could be. She looked at him, her heart aching in ways she thought it never could again. Ethan, you don't need to say these things. Yes, I do, he said, his voice trembling. Because soon I might not get another chance. The doctors, they gave me months, maybe less. And when I look back, the only thing that truly mattered was you. You were home, Maya. I just didn't realize it until I'd burned the house down. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say something comforting, something kind, but words felt too small. So instead, she reached out and placed her hand gently over his, a simple human gesture. Maybe, she said quietly, this is the universe's way of letting you make peace with yourself. He closed his eyes, tears slipping free. I don't deserve even that. Maybe not, she whispered, but that's not for me to decide. Over the next few weeks, she visited occasionally, not out of obligation, but because there was a strange serenity in those visits. Two broken souls sitting together, not as lovers, but as witnesses of what had been. They talked about small things, books, films, the news, the past. Sometimes they sat in silence, and that silence spoke volumes. One evening, as golden light poured through the window, he said softly, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't ruined it all?" Maya smiled gently. We'd probably still be together, but maybe I'd still be small, dependent, lost in your shadow. You think leaving me saved you? I know it did, she said, because it forced me to find myself. He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Then maybe it was meant to happen that way. Maybe it was, she replied. Pain can destroy or it can shape. I chose the latter. He gave a weak chuckle. You always were stronger than me. Not stronger, she said, just more willing to learn. Days turned into weeks, and his condition worsened. His once firm hands now trembled when he reached for his cup of tea. But when Maya was there, he seemed calmer. One day, as she helped him sit by the window, he looked at her and whispered, "Thank you for not hating me." She smiled sadly. "I stopped hating you when I realized hate still means you matter. I moved on when I could think of you and feel peace instead." He closed his eyes, a faint tear sliding down. "I'm glad you did." Outside, the sky began to darken, the first drops of rain tracing the glass, much like the night she left him. But now, the sound was gentle, almost forgiving. Maya sat beside him, watching the rain, lost in the rhythm of memory. After a while, Ethan spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I had one wish, it would be to see you wear that smile every day. You deserve to be happy, Maya. Truly happy." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "I am," she said softly, "in my own way." He smiled weakly, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "Then I can rest easy knowing that." A soft silence followed, broken only by the rain and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Maya didn't know if this would be the last time she saw him, but something in the air told her it might be. When she finally rose to leave, Ethan reached for her hand one last time. His grip was frail, but his eyes held a depth she'd never seen before. Humble, raw, real. "Maya," he whispered, "I may not have been your forever, but you were mine." Her heart clenched. She leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss on his forehead. "Goodbye, Ethan." Then she turned and walked out into the rain once more, but this time it didn't feel cold. It felt like release, like closure, like the end of a long, silent storm finally breaking into sunlight. But as she drove away, a strange feeling tugged at her chest, as if the story between them still had something left unsaid, a chapter she had yet to read. 2 weeks later, Maya received a phone call just as dawn was breaking. The city was still wrapped in quiet mist when her phone buzzed softly beside her. She already knew before answering. Some instincts are sharper than sound. The nurse's voice on the other end was gentle, cautious, as if trying not to wake the ache she was about to deliver. Ethan had passed away peacefully in his sleep the night before. He hadn't called for anyone, but on his bedside table, there was an envelope with her name on it. Maya didn't cry. Not immediately. She just sat there, phone in hand, staring into the soft gray light filling her room. The stillness was heavy but not cruel. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm, the kind that doesn't hurt, just settles. Later that morning, she drove to the hospice where he had spent his final days. The staff recognized her instantly. They spoke to her softly, kindly. One of them handed her the envelope. "He wanted you to have this," the nurse said with a tender smile. "He wrote it a few hours before he passed. He said it would bring peace." She took it with trembling hands. The paper felt warm, though she knew it couldn't be. It was a simple white envelope with her name written in the same uneven handwriting as before. For a long moment, she couldn't open it. She just stared at it, as though it held not words but the weight of an entire lifetime. Then, quietly, she unfolded it. "Maya," it began, asterisk, "if you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage to say goodbye. Not the kind that's bitter or painful, but the kind that comes when a person has finally understood the truth of their own mistakes. Asterisk, asterisk, you were right. I didn't lose you because of one betrayal. I lost you because I was blind to the light you carried, the way you made everything around you bloom. You were never meant to be owned, only to be loved, and I fail to see that. But thank you for visiting me, for showing me kindness even when I deserved none. You didn't just forgive me, you freed me. Asterisk, asterisk, don't grieve for me, Maya. I've had more peace in these last few weeks talking to you than I ever had in the years I spent pretending to be happy. Wherever I am now, I hope it's somewhere I can watch you continue to shine. You once said pain teaches. Maybe that's what this was all for, so I could finally learn what love really means. Asterisk, asterisk, live fully, love deeply. And when you look at the sunset, think of it as a promise that some endings aren't tragic, they're just transformations. Asterisk, Ethan, by the time she reached the last line, tears had finally broken free, falling silently onto the page. Not tears of sorrow, but closure, a release long overdue. She pressed a letter against her heart and exhaled, whispering softly into the empty room, "Goodbye, Ethan." That night, she stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights. The air was cool and the moon hung low, golden, quiet, kind. Below, the streets hummed with life. People moving, loving, hurting, healing, all at once. Maya thought of how fragile and magnificent the human heart was, how it could shatter and still keep beating, still find rhythm again. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The weight she had carried for so long was finally gone. The love that had once broken her had now completed its circle, from passion to pain to forgiveness to peace. In the weeks that followed, she poured herself into her designs like never before. Her next collection was titled Rebirth. Each piece told a story of loss and renewal, of endings that became beginnings, of fire that didn't destroy but purified. Critics called it soul stitched into fabric. The world saw beauty, but those who knew her story felt truth. During the show's final runway, as the last model walked under a cascade of soft golden light, Maya stood backstage, tears glistening in her eyes. Applause erupted like a heartbeat, echoing through the hall. It wasn't just success. It was a resurrection. She thought of Ethan's words, asterisk, "When you look at the sunset, think of it as a promise." Asterisk, that night, the lights felt like hundreds of little sunsets blooming before her. After the show, she stepped outside for air. The sky was painted in deep amber and violet hues, the kind of beauty that asked for silence, not applause. A small breeze brushed her hair, as if the world itself sighed in contentment. She smiled faintly, whispering into the wind, "I made it." Life began to move forward in gentle, unexpected ways. Maya started teaching young designers, especially women who had lost themselves in broken relationships or broken dreams. She saw her younger self in them, unsure or afraid, but full of untapped brilliance. And every time she guided one of them toward rediscovering their strength, It felt like lighting another candle in a once dark room. One afternoon, after a long lecture, a student approached her shyly with a notebook clutched to her chest. "Miss Maya," she said, "how do you forgive someone who never deserved it?" Maya paused, looking at the young girl's uncertain eyes. Then she smiled gently. "Forgiveness isn't for them," she said. "It's for you, so you can breathe again without choking on the past." The girl nodded slowly, the words sinking deep, and Maya realized then that was her purpose, to turn her scars into maps for others lost in their storms. Months turned into years. Solace by Maya grew into a global name, but she never let the fame distract her from what mattered: authenticity, empathy, grace. Every design she created carried a message, strength wrapped in softness. One evening, while visiting a small town for an art exhibition, she wandered into a bookstore. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, but as fate would have it, a book on the front table caught her eye. It was titled Letters We Never Sent. She smiled at the irony and picked it up. Inside, it was a collection of real letters from lovers, dreamers, and strangers who had written to the people they'd lost. She turned to a random page, and there, written in familiar handwriting, was a letter signed *E*. Her breath caught. It was short, but she knew instantly it was Ethan's. The letter read, "If love is energy, then hers still lives in the folds of time. And if regret is a shadow, then mine will always follow the light she became." Maya stood there for a long moment, her heart aching in that quiet, sacred way reserved for the past that never truly dies. But this time, it didn't hurt. It felt beautiful, as if the universe had folded their story neatly, placed it back into the library of time, and said, "You can rest now." When she left the bookstore, the evening sky had turned into a watercolor of purples and golds. A light drizzle began to fall, catching the glow of the street lamps. She lifted her face to the rain, smiling softly. Somewhere, she thought, Ethan might be watching, and maybe, just maybe, he was proud. Years later, when people asked her what her greatest inspiration was, she never spoke of the fame, the awards, or even the success story. She would simply say, "A love that taught me how to let go." Because in the end, that was the truth she had come to live by, that not every love story ends with forever. Some end with freedom. Some end with peace. And sometimes the most beautiful closure isn't reunion, it's evolution. Maya continued to live with grace, designing, teaching, inspiring. Her home was filled not with photographs of the past, but with plants, music, and letters from people whose lives she had touched.
And every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she'd step out onto her balcony, close her eyes, and whisper to the fading light, "I forgive. I love. I'm free." Because true healing, she had learned, wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about transforming it into art, into strength, into quiet wisdom. And somewhere beyond the reach of time and regret, perhaps in a realm where hearts no longer break, Ethan smiled, watching the woman he once lost become everything she was always meant to be. The story they wrote together had ended long ago, but the legacy of it, the love, the lessons, the forgiveness, would echo forever, carried softly on the wind like the whisper of rain after the longest storm.